Hello again, friends. And you are our friends, and happy holidays. Merry Christmas, happy Chanukah, and welcome to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru, wherever you are, here at this festive time of the year. I'm your host, the great Brian Last, and we have a packed show today. Questions, cameos, songs, and a watch-along. And of course, the man who'll be answering those questions and lending his expertise to the watch-along, the star of the drive-thru, Mr. Jim Cornette.
Keep going. You were doing so good.
That's why I stopped.
I wasn't going to interrupt you. Just keep going. You were doing fine.
Keep going where? I got to the point where I introduced you.
Stretch.
Here he is, Mr. Jim Cornette.
Actually, I wanted to pop on Happy Chanukah, but I was trying to see if you could just go a little bit longer before I had to chime in. This is your show. I'm just the resident expert here. You are the captain of this ship. And I'm tired. It's cold. It's wet. I'm tired. You know, I talked to you, yesterday or day before. The days blur now, especially because it's dark so long. I hate this time of year. More darkness than light. But I talked to you a day or two ago, and you said, "How you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm fine. The plumber says he's just going to take out part of the wall." And you said, "Well, you're taking that better than I thought you would." I said, "Well, when you're just beaten down, it's like, okay, just take my wall. Take my wall, please." Just to let everybody know, I don't even know if we've updated. We haven't done a program since then, but the plumber took out part of my wall in the kitchen the other day to get to the root of an issue that we had that I didn't know we had, that we've had for apparently for a little while, but I didn't know we had till this past week, which was that in renovations here at the castle, Brian, some parts of the castle are over 60 years old, while some parts are only 15 years old. Some parts are just brand new. But one of the old parts happened to be the last section of the old, well, you always heard lead pipe, right? But the cast iron pipe, whatever kind of plumbing pipes material that they fabricated the plumbing pipes out of back in the 50s, the last 8-foot section or so decided sometime back that it said, fuck it. And holes began opening up in this formerly closed up pipe. But we never knew this because the water drips down. Did you know this? This is something the plumber explained to me. Water goes down.
That's right.
And when the pipe was inside the wall, it wasn't going to come out where we could see it. It's going to go down. And that's why, I have a small fish pond in my crawl space. But then finally there got to be so much water and one of those holes jammed up or stopped up somehow, and it started running out underneath the dishwasher. But anyway, it only took about 8 hours on Friday while I was trying to work in the adjacent room for him to take out a section of the wall, replace that last piece of pipe, make off with a lot of my money, and now at least the kitchen is dry. But the folks tomorrow are coming to see about sucking out the pond underneath the crawl space. Because I had that a few years ago, just lined and sealed up real nice with plastic and all this stuff. It was the cleanest room in the house. So now it's just puddled up on that plastic down there. They're either going to clean the water out or bring some goldfish in.
With all the changes you've made to Castle Cornette, do you think Mama Cornette would approve?
If I ever got actually everything finished and working all at the same time, I believe she would. She would appreciate the care we've taken on the creekstone and the cypress paneling and the oak floors and etc. And she had started replacing. She had to replace one of the original pipes downstairs in the bar area, even before she passed away. So it was starting to become an issue, but I think we've caught almost everything now, he says. I want to also, that's what I was doing with my Friday. And I want to thank everybody also that, since they heard the experience, that has tweeted or sent a message or whatever and asked about Stacy's back. And we still don't know They haven't called to see about scheduling a surgery. There's only a pandemic and Christmas and New Year's, imminent. So I'm sure they have nothing to do. But if this tells you how she's feeling, she's looking forward to having surgery. Because this isn't like an injury where it is what it is, which good or bad, at least because that's the reason why it's gotten so much worse fairly quickly here, because the thing is growing. The cyst, if you didn't hear the program, she doesn't have alien, right? The thing is growing. There's a cyst in her back, not far from the surface, but it has grown and is pressing on whatever that nerve is back there. And so over the last couple of weeks especially, I mean, yesterday, she's walking around with a cane. She can't go up and down the stairs real good. And she'll go from sitting in a chair to laying on the bed to sitting on a couch in different places but nothing works. And then it will subside for a little while and lull you into a false sense of security. And then wasn't that an old Richard Pryor routine? And then bam, it come back and snatch you. But anyway, so I appreciate everybody asking about that. We don't know anything about when she's going to have surgery. That's why I'll segue into the merchandise update while I'm at it, because this is what I'm doing. When we close down on December 31st, Cornette's Collectibles at JimCornette.com, which we originally were planning on doing anyway, as you will recall, to restock and get me some rest, but we're planning on being closed for January, opening back up in February. The exact date will be open-ended depending on when we can get this scheduled, because then after that, she can't lift over 10 pounds for 4 to 6 weeks. So I have a feeling I'll have a lot of things going on. But the good news is, for Christmas, if you ordered a Cornette's collectible, anybody that ordered anything through Wednesday morning, December the 16th, internationally or domestic, everything through that point has already been shipped out or was shipped out over this weekend, December 18th and 19th. That's as quick as I could turn it around and get it out. That stuff may make it and it may not. The stuff that was shipped on like 17, 18, 19, according to my sources in the post office. Brian, as you know, I do have a pretty good in with the Postal Service, and they're fucking slammed. And their shit stacked up and backed up, and they're saying even the official post office estimates are probably 2 or 3 days off. But that might get there. Anything ordered after December 16th, you've heard of what I've been doing the past few days. That stuff will ship after the Monday after Christmas, because I'm still dealing with fish ponds and plumbing and bad backs, and it ain't gonna get there anyway. And I've been telling you this for weeks, so shame on you, nanny boo-boo. But it will ship Monday after Christmas. Somebody asked me if I'd put up my Christmas decorations yet on Twitter. I said, Saturday, I had enough time to clean enough stuff out of the garage, or AKA the Cornette's Collectibles Fulfillment Center, so I can get Black Beauty in for the first time in 3 months, because it's fucking cold outside. So now I don't have any Christmas decorations up yet. We have an a all year round Christmas tree. It's one of those plastic jobs, but you plug it in and it looks lovely. And we're going to plug that in long about Wednesday afternoon. What about you, Brian? What is Last Manor decorated for the holidays?
We didn't do anything on the outside this year, but on the inside, we have a couple things going on. Suzanne bought a 14-foot tree, so that's in the den. And then, so I didn't feel so insecure with my tiny menorah. I got this 10-foot inflatable bear with a menorah.
Wait a minute. You mean to tell me you have menorah envy? You're insecure about your tiny
Well, it is a little weird. There's a 14-foot tree, and next to it's just this menorah, just a regular-sized menorah. So there's this inflatable bear with a yarmulke on and a tallis.
What the fuck?
And he holds a menorah. I don't know why it's a bear. And I also have a mensch on the bench, but he's also the size of the regular menorah. So we're representing...
Wait, you have a what now?
The mensch on the bench.
Are you having a stroke here? What are you saying?
You know about the elf on the shelf?
Well, an elf on a shelf is pretty much self-explanatory. You got an elf and you put it on a shelf, you got an elf on a shelf.
No, it's an actual product. Do you know about the elf? I guess you don't. So there's this Elf on a Shelf doll, and it became a thing, I don't know how many years ago, where a parent moves the elf to a different place in the house every single day leading into Christmas, and the kids have to find where the elf is, but you can't touch the elf because it'll lose its powers. And then eventually after Christmas, the elf just disappears into the closet.
You're just basically fucking children's minds up.
They like
at an early age.
It's a scavenger hunt, a daily scavenger hunt.
No. For one thing, goddamn, there's an inanimate object in your home that's moving around by itself, and it's left up to the children in the home, the weakest and the most vulnerable population of the house, to go find this supernatural inanimate object every day. But if you touch it, something about the magical powers will go on, and then after the holidays, it disappears completely, but they never know whether it's lurking somewhere waiting to reappear. What are you trying to do to these children?
So that's the Elf on the Shelf, and that became a big thing. And then all of a sudden, a few years ago, the Mensch on a Bench appeared at Bed Bath & Beyond. And it is a mensch. A mensch is a good Jewish person. A fine
Okay, well, see, there I was challenged on that.
And he's sitting on a bench. So, and you don't really move it around like the elf. It just kind of sits there and blesses the room.
So that's a regular type doll, action figure, whatever, that stays where you put it, and the children don't have to look for it, and it doesn't claim to have magical powers.
That is correct.
Well, that sounds much more of a friendly thing to be in a home with a child. Who started this Elf on a Shelf business?
I don't know.
Well, who concocted that backstory? Was it one of these fucking weirdo sex cults you hear about? People trying to escape from?
I don't think it's that. But I'm not sure where it came from.
Elf on a Shelf. I'd rather have a mensch on a bench and he can just sit there. Do you have to have a bench, though?
It comes with a bench. It comes with a bench.
It comes with a bench.
It comes with a little tiny bench.
Little bitty bench.
That's right.
Because I don't really have a big bench in my home. I have couches, chairs, recliners, ottomans, a Davenport, a chifforobe. No benches.
Well, fortunately, he comes with his own bench, and we come with our own questions this week here on the Drive Thru.
Have you told him what we're watching here on the pro? Did you billboard the show, Brian?
I didn't say what we were watching, just that we were watching something.
What, are you ashamed of it?
You are.
It was your idea to begin with.
Are you ashamed of it? I know what we're going to watch. Are you ashamed of it?
No, I'm not. I was letting you, Mr. Host, tell, but I'll go ahead and tell them. But then the people are going to, the people out there are going to, oh, Cornette's watching himself again. But you said you've gotten requests for this. People have asked about this. You asked me to do this. Me and Paul E. Dangerously from the 1989 Great American Bash, one-on-one, nose to nose. We're going to watch that today and talk about it.
That's right. That's exactly right.
But tell them how you twisted my arm, because I don't want them to think I'm just watching myself just willy-nilly.
Well, you just kind of did. I said a lot of people have asked about this match. I thought it'll be interesting because it's not just a match between two managers. You could barely walk. There was a lot of interesting things going on behind the scenes there, so it would be a fun match to watch.
All right. It'll be better than what we watch current. Maybe one of these kids, if they watch this match, they'll be able to learn how to throw a punch. Not from Paul. We'll get to that. Don't be like Paul when throwing a punch. But it's amazing, having seen him so much recently, to go back and just bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, and then we'll get to our questions, and I'll let Brian take over the program. Bear in mind that I am currently 15 pounds lighter than I was during this match. I wonder what Mr. Heyman could say the same.
Well, Jim, now that all the pleasantries are out of the way, let's get to some questions.
Yeah, pleasantries, because we've already established in our off-air conversation that neither one of us are really on the ball today, so who knows what the fuck we're going to get. We'll see what happens.
I will say a lot of the listeners seem to be on the same page. I don't know about on the ball, but all of a sudden, in the past week and a half, 2 weeks, On Twitter, I noticed that a lot of people were sending me the clip of your debut on Monday Night Raw, you and Bobby Heenan embracing in the ring. And then when I went to go through the drive-thru emails, I was surprised to see there were a number of questions about this, and I'm not exactly sure why this is a popular topic again. Do you have any idea?
No, but I've seen the same thing on my Twitter, and it was today. As a matter of fact, I just watched the clip again because you had mentioned the same thing. It's not an anniversary. It was in July. You can tell because I'm sweating like a whore in church. I am just pouring sweat. But it's not an anniversary. It was in July of 1993. There's no newsworthy event that would have been surrounding this particular show or clip or whatever. It's just people started passing it around again. And we've talked about it, previously on the program, but it has been a while. And if you aren't subscribing to the Patreon or really doing the deep dive on the YouTube channel, some folks may not have heard all the stories, but I don't know why it's been circulating like this. It's just all of a sudden, past couple of weeks.
Well, like I said, we got a ton of questions and a lot on Twitter, too. So just to sum everything up, let's talk about what you remember about this, what you remember about making the deal to go into the World Wrestling Federation.
What I remember about this, like I've just awoken from a coma, and this is, golly, I remember when I hugged Bobby Heenan on national television.
It was a big deal for a number of reasons. You were the guy. I mean, I think I remember in the Observer, the headline was "Hell has frozen over again."
Lawler froze it first.
That's right. So this was hell freezing over a second time, and you had been pretty vocal about your thoughts about WWF for a number of years. Beyond that, it's a big deal because it is you and Bobby Heenan together on air, two guys who are widely considered 1 and 2 of the greatest managers of all time.
And then there was another part in there in that while they had acknowledged that Jerry Lawler was the king of wrestling in Memphis, they didn't go so far as to actually name the promotion. Smoky Mountain Wrestling was the first time in their modern national TV run that they had acknowledged another promotion and indicated that the Heavenly Bodies were from there and I was from there and we were doing. Then that led to the Rock and Roll coming in, Smoky Mountain title being defended, just to show that I was getting publicity. Getting publicity, son, is what I was doing.
They didn't just acknowledge it, Vince said it, which was really, it's awkward to hear him, "Oh, he's from Smoky Mountain Wrestling." Yeah. What do you know about that, mister?
Yeah, well, what in the world? But anyway, and I don't know how, I was just going to talk about this particular interview segment, but since you led with such a sweeping essay question on what led to me, we've told this story recently. They can go to the YouTube. As far as I had been contacted in Knoxville by Bruce Pritchard. I was managing Dr. Tom at the time, and Stan had just retired. Wonderful timing on his part. And Jimmy Del Rey, beautiful timing on his part, had just come from Florida to take his place. And we had sent Bruce a tape, and I've told that story before, et cetera, with his dad of us, ribbing him. But he played it for other people, apparently. And that is the period of time when Jerry Jarrett was up there. It had already brought Lawler, so there was a precedent for freezing hell. But they needed an American spokesperson, as we later phrased it, for Yokozuna. That's when Vince was earnestly wanting to build Lex Luger as the next Hulk Hogan. The conversation, I believe, probably between Bruce and I happened probably the week after the 4th of July when Luger had body slammed Yokozuna, or hip tossed him. It was really just a hip toss on the deck of the Intrepid in the big deal to kick off that SummerSlam 93 angle. So, and I've said this before with all respect to Mr. Fuji, who was a great wrestler for years and drew huge money out in San Francisco and was a tag team champion in the WWF, etc. But you can't make the case he was a good interview for a main event world championship match at WrestleMania for your new project that wants to be the next Hulk Hogan. I mean, my God, the Lincoln Douglas debates couldn't have made Lex Luger the next fucking Hulk Hogan. So that's not even a knock on Fuji, but they needed an interview. And somehow in that exchange I had with Bruce, Vince had actually seen, or somebody had called his attention to a tape of me. And we got to do this. And they knew, Bruce knew, because he'd known me since Houston, that I would not come instead of Smoky Mountain, or I wouldn't come without the Heavenly Bodies or that's how they pitched it to me. Bruce called and said, hey, do you and the Bodies want to make some shots? We're short on tag teams. Maybe do it Raw and work with the Steiners at SummerSlam. Oh, all right. New Rick and Scott from WCW. That'd be a great match. I said, can we acknowledge Smoky Mountain Wrestling? Can there be, an acknowledgement here and some type of, oh, yes. And I didn't realize until we got there in Alexandria Bay, New York. We told that story here about 6 months ago about that giant tin building. They said it's still there. Somebody said it's still a dump. But we're expecting, WWF Monday Night Raw to be in a reasonably modern arena, and it's this fucking exhibition hall in Alexandria Bay out in the gravel parking lot. That was our debut. But when we got there to do our first night to TV, that's when Bruce brought me back to see Vince and Pat Patterson. I forgot to mention the first time that I met Pat Patterson in person when we did our tribute to him the other day. I had met Pat outside the Orange Bowl in Miami after the Great American Bash 1986.
Really?
Yes, because me and Bobby and Dennis, we weren't on last. I think we were on next to last, and it's the Orange Bowl, and it's not a great neighborhood, so we're rushing to get in the fucking rental car and get the fuck out of Dodge, beat traffic, right? Not that there was 50,000 people in the Orange Bowl. That was one of the ones that was a little dodgy. There was like 10 or 12,000. But as we're rushing out to the parking lot, try to beat the people, some guy in a fucking frumpy coat and a golf hat and tennis shoes is standing outside sort of at one of the exits where you can still see inside the building and the stadium and watch what's going on, but he's outside, right in the breezeway or whatever, on the way out. And he grabs me by the arm. I think it's some fan. I'm like, hey, buddy. He takes the hat off. He says, Jim, it's Pat Patterson. I said, what the fuck? And he had come to check out what was going on. He may have had a residence down there. Almost everybody did. Vince did. Everybody had some place in Florida that they stayed part-time or whatever. But for whatever reason, he was in Miami. He was checking, and he gave me the, shh, don't tell anybody. I said, I won't. He said, I just want to tell you I love you guys. I really enjoy your work. You and the boys, you're fantastic. And I'm not saying this now, right? Because if I really wouldn't put myself over, I'd have thought to say this when we were talking about him the other day. But he said, I know you got to go. I just wanted to say hello. Maybe we work together some. That was Pat, right? Maybe we'll work together sometime. He just wanted to let me know as one of the boys that, they liked what we were doing. And this was after we had, talked to Vince that time and decided against going anywhere. And Tully's friend had stooged us off for going to New York to have the meeting to begin with.
And beyond you could see why Pat Patterson would love the Midnight Express.
Well, it was the closest thing to watching him and Stevens, I guess, at that point in time.
In that era, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, but anyway, that's the first time I met him. Anyway, so I went back, and we had met Vince, obviously, earlier in 86 also. But we go back to talk to Vince and Pat in Alexandria Bay, New York at Raw, since I digressed way long ago. And that's when they set me down and said, well, we wondered if you'd mind doing something else for us. Well, what? Of course, yeah, what? And that's when they hit me with the American spokesperson thing for Yokozuna. And they kind of beat around the bush also, because Fuji was a very valued employee at trying to say, he's been with the company forever, and this is the way we started it out, but now we got to do something to really juice up Luger as much as possible in this rivalry, because Vince did legitimately fully intend at that point that Lex Luger would be the guy that beat Yokozuna eventually. Even then, I come to find out he wasn't going to do it at SummerSlam. He was going to stretch it out. But at that point, it wasn't common for them to tell, especially me coming in. I assumed until I found out like a week beforehand that Luger was going to win SummerSlam. Because I thought, with this fucking build, he'll look like a plate full of piss. I even said that one time. He'll look like a plate full of piss if he doesn't. And he didn't, and he did. But I said, okay, and that was the point of it. Is Bruce had kind of clued him in that if they pitched me and the Bodies coming up together, acknowledging Smoky Mountain, that then I would agree to do the thing, to come to begin with, and do the thing with Yoko, which is what happened. So then I had only in passing a couple of times had a chance in a couple of hotel lobbies to ever speak to Bobby Heenan before, because we had never worked in the same place. And not only that, but the only time that he ever appeared in Memphis that I was there was the first night with him and Bockwinkel, and I was just a photographer at that point and wasn't, poking around the goddamn, on the debut night of the AWA relationship. And those guys are back there. Jerry Jarrett and Vern Gagne are sitting over in a corner. I'm not going to be fucking running around introducing myself to everybody. That's before this handshake business came up. So we never got a chance to work together or even have a long conversation. So as soon as we got together that afternoon in the back in the building, it was the same thing as Percy Pringle, though. It was like we'd known each other and we could talk about each other and things we had done because we were such wrestling fans. Of course, Bobby was the first manager I ever saw on the first wrestling TV show I ever saw. I researched many of my repertoire from and just the way to be a chicken shit weasel heel manager. I saw it, how it was done. So I would do things that I would think Bobby would do, even if I'd never seen him do them. Cause he was the blueprint, right? But he was such a fan, like Percy was such a fan, that I love the thing you did with the so-and-so. He's seen the TVs or whatever. And also he was just so fucking funny, and we hit it off. And there was I went back and actually watched this clip because it was 27 years ago in July. So I haven't watched it a ton of times in the last 10 or 15 years, but I watched it since it was on Twitter so much lately and to discuss it. And it was 4 minutes from start to finish. And the premise of the whole thing was Pat was the guy who would lay stuff out for you on television in those days. Obviously, not every single match. They had some other agents, but I mean the creative, like the promos. This was an interview. So Pat just said, Bobby, when you see Jim coming, because that was still in the days when, and there's some validity to it, I'd never been on WWF television, even though I'd been on national TV for Crockett for years and years. I'd been off that for a couple years doing Smoky Mountain TV. And also there's the just WWF audience, which in Alexandria Bay, New York, I'll acquiesce to that. There were probably some of those people that had only seen WWF wrestling. So Pat just gave us the gist of it. We'll come up off out of the commercial or wherever we came from. And JC, you start walking to the ring. I can't do Pat's accent through this whole thing now or it'll sound funny. But JC, you start walking to the ring. Bobby, you see him, you get excited. You guys are old friends, because he knew that if Bobby liked me, then Bobby had heat and had been there for years. People would dislike me because I was a heel prick companion of that no good Bobby Heenan's. Obviously, Bobby picked up on the same thing. So that's all he had to say. Bobby, you see him. Oh, it's my old friend Jimmy. And you jump in the ring and you do the interview. That's the direction we got for it. And then, basically they didn't want to reveal me as being involved with Yokozuna until the following week. We were taping 2 shows that night. This was the first one, so they had me do the promo about the Heavenly Bodies. and issue a challenge to the Steiner brothers for the World Tag title, and that would eventually end up taking place at SummerSlam. And so that was my thing, hey, you're from Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And Bobby, of course, he knew what I was doing. I had my own promotion. I'm trying to get it over down there. It's hard times in wrestling. So he's going to give it that big build. And I said, that's right. And we've dominated. And now the only thing that we haven't done is come here and win this title too. And blah, blah, blah. That was the gist of the whole thing. Issue the challenge for the Steiners. Me and Bobby hug and kiss. We're old compadres. And cut to promo. And in 4 minutes, we did it. And we didn't discuss between Bobby and I word for word. So we played off of each other when we get in the ring. And he even stops me at the start. He says, no, you wait. I'm going to talk for a minute, because he really wanted to put me over. Because it wasn't like I was telling him, hey, Bobby, put me over. He wanted to. So he did it. He went into it that way. And then I'm doing the aw shucks thing because I'm being a heel too. You're too kind. I'm really so modest. And then we get to the meat of the matter, and then we get out of there, and Vince is shocked. And we weren't there for 20 minutes, and we didn't have scripted lines that we were bouncing off of each other. And that sometimes we'd talk over each other, because that's what people do when they're fucking hooting and hollering because they've just run into each other again after a while. There was some flow and some naturalness to it, rather than just this, we're reciting some material here. And since nobody had actually told us back in those days the words to say, even on Raw, that you didn't get that, we did what we would do. And just and I've said this before, I'm glad they shot me mostly from the waist up, because you're going to be being hugged and put over on national TV by Bobby Heenan. I had a fucking stiffy. It was... that was great. For the childhood wrestling fan in me, can you imagine that this is the first manager that I saw on the first wrestling show I saw? And now, wait a minute, 21 years after that, from, laying in my mom's floor and watching him on TV fuck with Sam Miniker and Dick the Bruiser, to being introduced by him when now I'm the top manager in the company that he's working for. He's retired and become an announcer, obviously, but that's fucking strange, odd, surrealistic even.
And boy, were you sweating.
Oh my God, it was hotter than the fucking 8th level of hell in that building. Oh, good Lord. Because the place was packed. I think they used it for, somebody said when they tweeted here, when we talked about it, as I said earlier this year, that it's still there and it's still a dump. And I think they use it for not rodeos, but just stock shows, cattle. There was cattle barns. There were cows outside, and there was no those lights were in there bouncing off that tin roof. It was like being in a fucking oven. Raw was not glamorous in 1993. Go to the Mid-Hudson Civic Center in Poughkeepsie, which I loved because it was in the same complex as the hotel they put us up, and they had great room service, so you didn't even have to go outside to go to the show. But the goddamn building seated like 1,800 people, and the wrestlers' locker rooms consisted of 2 rooms that basically would double as a standard-size hotel room, with 2 standard-size fucking bathrooms with 1 toilet and a shower stall for 50 fucking WWF wrestlers. You can imagine, besides the line to get into the bathroom at any given point, what the condition was of them later in the night. And the floors were fucking wet and shit, bags everywhere. We had to step over people. The humidity, the walls were fucking sweating. The early years of Raw was not all sunshine, lollipops, rainbows, and waterfalls, kids.
Where was the Raw? Because that was a great year for Raw, 93, at least until the end of the summer. Raw was awesome. Where was the Raw where you had the first interview where you confronted Luger? Was that there too? Because he sweated through his suit.
Yes, that's when I announced that I was the American spokesperson and approved the contract and stopped the proceedings while I approved same. That was the second hour that we taped that night. Yeah, everybody, it was like you just turned a shower hose on everybody. It was so fucking hot. He sweated through everything he had. Luger was a free perspirer. Anyway, Michael Hayes may have melted if he'd worked for the company at that point in time. If he'd have gone in that building, he may have looked like Vincent Price in a house of wax.
A quick follow-up question sent on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from Bradass. I couldn't find if you had answered this before. Apologies if so. Jim debuted in the WWF as Jim Cornette, but somewhere along the way he became James E. Always wondered if this was a legal issue or just Vince liking the latter better.
No, there was no legal issue to it. I've mentioned that I've told this story before, but what the hell? Everybody's a new listener, and by gum, we got to keep consistent on these things. My name is Jim Cornette. When I first went to Georgia for the little local promotion that Ole Anderson was going to, he got talent from Jerry Jarrett in Memphis and brought a local crew down so his guys could do the northern tours, but it was still being all run out of the Georgia office in Atlanta over at the Omni. They saw Jim Cornette, that Ronnie West did, the referee, and oh God, Scrappy McGowan, Charlie McGowan, who used to haul the ring. Scrappy McGowan, the referee, was his son. And they'd been there so long that Jim Cornette, Jim Barnett, they fucking got a tickle out of it. And that summer, and then Frank Morrell joined in on it. And some guys started calling me James E. Or Jim Z, right? As they used to call Jim behind his back, Jim Z. So anyway, over a period of time after that, I'd done it in Crockett when I, wanted to sound imperious and use my full name like James Tiberius Kirk. Nobody's going to put one over on old James E. Cornette. And Bruce knew that from Houston. It was, as a matter of fact, they even one of the first week's booking sheets in Atlanta I got was Jim Z. Barnett instead of Jim Cornette. But it was just a thing that they started doing. And, that was fine because it worked for me either way. So there was no legality or reason why it needed to be changed. It just made me sound like even more of an asshole, I guess.
Yeah, Barnett must have loved it.
I never got his. Maybe that's another reason why he didn't. Hey, I never did it on purpose. It was people were putting it on me. My hands were clean.
All right, well, let's get another
clean
question.
Hands.
Clean hands.
And bony fingers.
If you want clean hands, you need the right soap.
Well, that's exactly right, and I'll tell you where you can get it, folks. We have talked about these fine folks in the past, and they are back with us because of the popularity of the program and their products. They're fine folks at Hawthorne. And, when last we talked about them, we mentioned that Brian had been getting drunk regularly off this rum soap that they sent him. I don't know whether you're supposed to melt it down and drink it, Brian.
I don't drink it. I use it to wash my hands.
Well, somehow or another, you seem a little tipsy after you wash your hands. Anyway, the people at Hawthorne is a premium tailored personal care brand. And I know what's it been now? 9 months of this pandemic, right? Let's face it. And all of us, you, me, any of us that can actually stay at home most of the time, avoid people, work remotely, as they say, whatever, we have let our personal grooming go. I mean, in all facets, whether it be the pits or the crotchal area or the head or the entire area of the body is just becoming one big giant flaky mess with everybody sitting in COVID quarantine. And the people at Hawthorne can take you out of that festering swamp that your body currently is, and they can make you smell and feel fresh and clean and perky and energetic with all these personal products. You just go at Hawthorne.co, that's HAWTHORNE, Hawthorne.co, and you take their little quiz. because they tailor the products that they recommend to you by the answers to the questions they ask you. What's your favorite drink? Do you like to go out? Do you like to stay in? Whatever the case may be, you take the quiz, and then they recommend a bunch of products, lotions and potions and soaps and shampoos. You like the work and play cologne, Brian, although I know you never play. You always work. But it's good. It's good for working and playing.
They're fantastic colognes. I will say this. I have fallen in love with the bar soap. It's, again, customized to what I put in my survey, and it is fantastic. I've been really, really enjoying it, and I've now ordered more. So I have more in stock here at Last Manor. I could use it whenever I want.
But see, once again, I mentioned, there was a rum soap that you like now, the bar soap. It's always a bar, a rum, or whatever.
Oh, come on.
You may have a problem. But anyway, guys, whether you want to smell better for the woman in your life or the potential woman in your life that you might get if you smelled a little better, go to hawthorne.co and use the promo code JIM to get 10% off your first purchase. You just go there, you take the little quiz, they recommend the stuff, you pick what you like, boom, hawthorne.co, promo code JIM, 10% off your first purchase. Smell better, feel better, look better, have more confidence. Well, get out. It'll make you feel just like a wang doodle dandy.
Well, Jim, earlier you brought up Pat Patterson. Let me ask a Pat Patterson-themed question here. This is a follow-up on a tweet that I saw, actually, that Dave Meltzer put out about the most influential people in the last 40 years in professional wrestling, and I believe Dave said that Pat was the second most influential when he stops and he thinks about it and he puts everything together in his head and comes up with an answer. Here's an email about it. This was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Ron in Elyria, Ohio.
Elyria,
Ohio. I heard Dave Meltzer say Pat Patterson was the second most important man in wrestling in the last 40 years. I think Dusty Rhodes outdid him as far as what they contributed, performer, and what they did behind the scenes. Dusty made so many pay-per-views people are familiar with today. I know Pat was a great finish guy, but isn't Dusty's footprint a little bigger than Pat's? What say you?
I mean, it's not like it's widely off, but I still have to go with Pat because of the continuing, constant, up to the current time effect, whether impact, connection. Even when he wasn't full-time, he was always there for the big stuff until just a few years ago. There were periods of time where Dusty didn't have, even in the 70s and 80s, where Dusty didn't have the pull that Pat Patterson did, and in as big a company. I mean, everybody can battle about creativity. My God, you can go back at Toots Mondt might have kicked both their asses for creativity when you're talking all time and over 100-year period. But from the last 40 years, from 1980 to 2020, Pat had a more prominent position, really, behind the scenes, more influence on more guys for a longer period of time, and in a bigger company in most cases. Well, in all cases. When Dusty was in the WWF, he didn't have the pull that Pat ever did. That's not even knocking Dusty. That's just, goddamn, when you go as far as either one of those guys have gone, there's got to be some delineation from one to another, but it's still pretty fucking close. What do you think, Brian? This is your show.
I think Pat is more influential. Dusty had periods of time where he was one of the most important people in the business.
Yeah.
He was the booker for the second biggest company in the business that was the only one competing really head-to-head with McMahon in a lot of key areas. But
well, and also in the ring, you can have your cake and eat it too, because Dusty was never the in-ring performer that Pat Patterson was from an athletic and a working standpoint. not a psychological working standpoint, but just a standpoint of physically working, Pat was the guy there, but Pat was never one of the top 3 or 4 box office attractions in the business at any one time, which Dusty was more than once. So there's 2 ways of looking at the in-ring.
Who do you think was the better finish guy?
Honestly, Pat. Dusty had big ideas. Dusty was rotten on details. Dusty didn't care about the details, baby. It's all the big ideas, baby. And I mean, the finishes that Dusty is famous or infamous for, pretty much all were either learned from or flavored by Eddie Graham. And then you can see also the Roy Shire and the Bill Watts. Now that I'm learning more about Roy Shire and putting a lot of this together, and also the Dory Funk Sr. after the Amarillo book, you can so the thing is, Pat had more intricate finishes. Dusty liked to get the fucking heat, make the comeback, and get the fuck out of there and leave the people screaming. Pat built the old time, the other side of Eddie Graham, or the old time Roy Shire, what his shit built and built and built, and he had twists and turns, and it was a little more complicated side of that type of finish, and just, you know, had a little bit more roller coaster quality to it. So I think Pat was, but at the same time, Pat never sat down. Dusty shot everything at the fucking wall. You can't say that he didn't, but a lot of his shit stuck because of the power of his personality and the guys that he was able to pull together as a team and put them together and use them. He drew more money in a shorter period of time than anything that Pat ever booked really did, except for after the WWF national expansion. And somebody can say, well, goddamn, okay, but Pat still booked it. Well, they'd already got a head start on Crockett. Dusty made Crockett hot when Crockett was still a, 3 or 4 state territory and running Philly and Baltimore on the side. So they've each got their points.
And, you brought it up before that Dusty would leave people, standing up and screaming. There is that different philosophy based on the way the 2 companies did things differently. Typically, with very rare exceptions, and you can remember them pretty easily, WWF left fans happy. They left the arena happy. They got to see Hulk Hogan pose. When they didn't, like I said, you remember when Andre and DiBiase screwed Hogan. It was so memorable. The NWA, or Jim Crockett Promotions, you saw Ric Flair somehow walk out of there with the belt again, and you were furious. I mean, it was a completely different mindset.
Well, but also, that was kind of inherited by Pat, because that was the WWF style, because that was the WWF style in the 70s and even in the 60s. They didn't go for heat in the arenas because, I mean, let's face it, in the Northeast, well, they'd had a riot. The big riot in 1957 in Madison Square Garden almost got wrestling shut down. Rocca and Dr. Jerry Graham and Bruiser and
Carpentier,
thank you. And they were afraid of riots, and they could very well happen in the old building in Philly, the downtown arena, in the Boston Garden. Blackjack Mulligan facing Pedro Morales for the WWF title. That was in 1972. It wasn't even like it was a big heat scene. It wasn't like that Morales had been fucked around and goddamn Mulligan was beating on him like the Cleveland riot with Ox Baker. It was just during the match with Mulligan and Pedro. I guess Mulligan had Pedro down, and the guy jumped in the ring with the knife, and from top to bottom, he got Mulligan. I think they said it started in the shoulder and went down the back for a while, and then skipped, and then went down the leg, the thigh some, but it was 200 and some stitches. He had to take like 3 months off, and the cops didn't even get the guy. Gorilla Monsoon ran out and grabbed the guy and bounced him to the cops, and they let him run off because they didn't know what the fuck was going on. So they always not only that, they put the title match on. That started the tradition. A lot of people said it's because Hogan wanted to get out early and get back to the hotel. He benefited from this. But they put the title match on early in the show. It wasn't the last match like it was everywhere else in wrestling, or the main event. Whether it was title match or not, it wasn't the last match like everywhere else. They would make use of it to announce later on in the night before they let the people go, the return match for next month or the main event for next month or whatever. But also it was so that the people would know there were more matches to come. They could get the main event on and get it out of there. The participants could get out so there wouldn't be trouble. And the people were less likely to riot when it wasn't the end of the evening. All that came into play, and that's how that tradition in the Northeast started. And that's why they left the people happy also, because they never beat Pedro. That's why they finally took the title off Pedro. They were having too many riots with the Puerto Rican and the Hispanic fans. You know, if you did anything to fucking Morales, that's they wanted to. He wasn't drawing as well as Bruno did in some of the key markets, but he was selling out Madison Square Garden every month. But it was rowdy, and they wanted to make a change and bring Bruno back. But they beat Bruno with Koloff, and then in 71 in the Garden, and never even announced it. And didn't give Koloff the belt. He just went, and the people were silent in shock. But they beat Pedro out of town when he dropped it to Stasiak, right? Where was that? That was Philadelphia, too.
It was Philly, yeah.
It was Philly. And they didn't announce, they would never even announce the babyface had lost when they did that. They'd just get the heel out quick. And remember, as a matter of fact, Koloff, I think that was in his book, is when he beat Bruno for the title and then lost it to Morales, they moved him out of the territory completely because they were afraid he had so much heat for being the guy that beat Bruno that it would start a riot just if he was there. He was attacked he was on a subway going to somewhere in New York, and he was attacked by some woman with a fucking umbrella or whatever, because you beat Bruno, boom, boom, boom. So that's why they made people happy. In Southern wrestling and all the way out with traditional wrestling, almost everywhere else. Vern was a kind of a different flavor altogether in the upper Midwest. He was more picky and choosy with his angles, but wrestling everywhere else, especially in the South, the towns were weekly or bi-weekly. There were smaller markets. You had riots, but the promoters didn't really fucking care because they had to draw money consistently. So you constantly had heat on your heels, and the baby faces had to climb a huge mountain to overcome it because people had to keep coming and buying a ticket every week over and over and over until they finally saw that. So that was wrestling centered on heat, and they had riots, but the buildings weren't as big. And I get back in those days, I guess those fucking Northeastern fans were a mean bunch. But that's kind of the way it all started, and that was what Vince grew up on. So then it transferred over. Even when some of those things changed, the reasons behind those things were tradition and kept on like that. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And again, that was the different philosophy that the WWF had compared to the NWA or Jim Crockett Promotions specifically. Let's get some more questions, Jim. We've gotten a few questions about the recent decline in popularity for the World Wrestling Federation, for WWE, no longer federated. This first one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Denny in Birmingham, England. With wrestling in freefall in terms of viewership and key demographics, certainly where WWE is concerned, do you think there would be any value added in WWE bringing back old school big names on a weekly basis on TV and guest matchmakers to advertise them on the show? Could Stone Cold be on TV one week while advertising Mick Foley for the week after, bringing back stars like Bret Hart, The Undertaker, The Rock, Hulk Hogan, Shawn Michaels as on-air guest general managers? Eventually,
I know Rock must be bored to tears now. He's been, home with, in the COVID for 9 months now. He must need something to do. I'm sure he's got a wide open calendar.
Eventually, the star talent would run out, but surely having current stars even verbally interact with former big names would do something better for the declining ratings.
No! That's what's got him in this position to begin with. For the last 10 years or more, every time Steve Austin and The Rock or people of that era come back, it just magnifies visually and emotionally and every other way how not over the current guy, the last guy they had that could hang with that crew visually and verbally and in front of people and look as if he came off at the same level as Cena. And maybe they've got a couple on the roster that could do it these days, but all I think about when I've seen these segments where these guys have come back is how much bigger and better and badder that most of them still look. My God, Billy Gunn looks like Andre the Giant, and fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger had a baby next to everybody on the AEW roster, and he's my age. So they got to a point where bringing those guys back from when wrestling was last really over and everybody remembers it so fondly, to me just magnifies how small, bland, boring, lack of development that these guys have had. Sometimes it's not their fault. They might have a personality. They're not allowed to show it. But just how in every way that everything's been squeezed and milked out of this whole business. And, I remember that one time it was Austin and Rock and Miz. And this was like 10 years ago. They did something. I said, half of America has to be going, who is that fucking small child standing in there in between The Rock and Steve Austin?
The one that got me was years ago at WrestleMania. They had the return of Piper's Pit with Steve Austin. You're like, oh my God, what could this be? And then in the middle of it, Carlito walked out.
Oh God, yes. And it's not even fair to those guys. And also remember the reason why we're in this sorry mess is because they've done nothing to make the talent that could be interesting on their roster interesting, and they've picked a lot of talent that wouldn't be interesting no matter what they did with them. And then they bring out people who are over from the past when the buildings were red hot and the fucking shit was over and these guys were over, and it just diminishes the modern guys even further. And sometimes it's not even their fault. So, here's another tool in the wrestling toolbox that they've nullified and made meaningless is bring in a legend or a veteran to get a young guy over. Well, and then when they do bring remember the tear they went on for a while, years. Every time they'd bring a veteran or a legend out, they'd make him look like a fucking goof. And then now when they bring the legends and the veterans out, they look so much better than the current talent. It does nothing. They've never figured out how to do this right. We just talked about with Bobby Heenan, and I figured it out in about 4 minutes. How a legend can get a new guy over. Nobody looked particularly stupid in that exchange. Everybody was themselves and came out looking more positive.
At this point, bringing someone like a Bret Hart or a Shawn Michaels or a Mick Foley or The Rock or whoever it may be, it's a Band-Aid. And you need something more than that.
Yeah, until they get somebody to do something with their current talent that's different and interesting enough that people will start watching again, then when you're going in that direction and there's already guys you have on the roster that people are half-ass interested in to begin with, then you can help them along with something like that. But not right now. It would just be, like, oh, look, there's Sting. He's back. Holy shit. Let's watch next week. Hey, there's Sting again. He's back again. He didn't do much more, did he? Maybe I won't watch next week. Next week, down 150,000 viewers. Something like that.
On a similar Wavelength, our next question sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Keith Hammond. I was listening to Jim rant about Raw and SmackDown's ratings drops, and I was wondering how he thought that WWE being a public corporation is affecting the current product. While going public opens you up to a lot of new money initially, and huge initial profits for the founders, it means that you now have to answer to stockholders and stock analysts who do not care about the wrestling product and demand you keep the stock price as high as possible at all times. On one hand, you would think that would always force the WWE to be even more responsible to their customers. But knowing that even a slight change in stock price can really affect your personal wealth, it's much harder to do the things that will upset it. You could feel huge pressure to do a lot of short-term stunts or things that will placate investors, like the Saudi deal and Thunderdome and The Undertaker's farewell in an empty arena, versus taking some short-term hits now for exponentially bigger payoffs in the future, and doing things which might be better in the long term for the health of the industry. In any event, I'm just making some educated guesses, since I have very limited first-hand experience in either the wrestling or stock market worlds. Thank you for reading this message.
Well, right now, it's not like they have to take a lot of risks. I don't know if they just said that next week for 3 hours, all the guys are going to sit around and tell old stories about when they used to go to fucking day camp, that the ratings would go much further down, would they? Aren't they? That's the thing, is it's not a big risk. It's just, you have to undo a lot of needless damage that's been done over the past few years where it's just silliness, just fucking silliness. We've talked about this. They have some of it on NXT, but the majority of it's on Raw, where grown adults, Otis or Tucky or whoever those grown adults act like children with the mentality of children. They do and say things that nobody would ever do and say. And it's obviously all tongue in cheek. It's sketch comedy, on the level of hee haw. And then they have matches where most of the guys do the same shit as everybody else does. And it's just on this program, they all look physically better and they're better trained. But they're not doing anything with some grit or realism to it. And it doesn't have to be adult. I see the people say, oh, well, they went PG and it ruined them. Mid-South Wrestling was PG in 1984. You couldn't cuss on television. Broadcast TV, at least, in 1984, you couldn't say, they didn't want you to say crap. Innuendo was out. Except for violence and blood, wrestling had the cleanest language of anything on television. And there was no boobies, and there was no dicks hanging out, and there was no sexual content, except for then, during the mid-'80s, the Valet Wars, where you got to see women dressed in 5 times as much as they wear on any of the WWE programs now. It's not about being PG or rated R. It's about being adult and real violence versus play violence, and creating or exposing or finding and letting them be real characters, Pinocchio, real talent that sounds like they talk like they would talk and they wrestle like they would wrestle, and you put importance in either the matches or who wins the matches or what happens in the matches or whether people play by the rules or whether they cheat or whether they steal something or whether they lie about something. And you get the guys on your roster, whether it be anybody from Walter to Kyle O'Reilly, that actually look like they're serious about this shit and can pull it off. And that's the way you get people invested. And then you give them some interesting things to fucking fuss over. And that's sometimes the easiest part of it. Because once you get good talent, you've got the fans educated to the fact that your product is serious and it ain't fucking showbiz wrestling. Then there's all kinds of cool reasons for those people on your roster to fucking want to fuck each other in the ass. But they ain't going to do any of that. So I don't know what they ought to do.
Well, that's the thing. WWE needs to have a period of time where they get away from WWE entertainment and get to being a wrestling company for a period of time. Because they think, I know people in the music industry had this attitude. I remember there was a Jerry Wexler interview I read one time where someone said, why do you think people will buy this record? It's because we tell them to buy it. And WWE has that attitude. Why do you think people are going to enjoy this and like it? Well, because we were putting it out there. And they still pretend like they listen to the fans and everything. But I've listened to some of those shareholder calls.
The Untouchables marathon that I've mentioned I'm a big fan of on H&I Network on Sunday afternoons that I often don't get to see because I'm recording this program. That's a scripted television program. But when it was first broadcast, it was one of the most violent television programs on the air. People were getting shot with machine guns and hit and run over by cars and beaten about the head and face, and they had blood and bruises and hit with slapjacks. And it also made the Italian Americans quite upset, specifically the Italian Americans who were involved in this thing of ours. And it was a hit television show, but it got a lot of heat. And they had to cut down starting the second season on the violence, and they gradually introduced some more criminals that were not of Italian descent. But the point is, it was a fake television program. People are like, oh, shit, that's making me and my kids uncomfortable watching that guy getting punched in the face. And it was hitting a nerve with the boys at the social club because there was enough realism in it. The point is, you don't have to make a silly show about people beating each other up. You could make a serious show about people beating each other up, and people would get more emotionally invested in it. If it's not otherwise you're watching a Three Stooges short. Oh, look, he poked him in the eye and poured boiling water over his head. Luckily, all this is fake. I might care.
On some of those investors' calls, people bring up the idea that the ratings are going down or various things. And Vince says, oh, well, we have to change creative. We have to do different things. You're the one doing the things. The one steady and creative all these years as everything has gone down is you. And everything's being done for you, for what you want to see and what you like. That's the problem.
I think we should have Einar do a cover version of The Way You Do the Things You Do, The Way You Do the Things You Do for Vince.
Well, we'll see. Again, Eddie Kendricks comes up here on the show. But, a lot of people think, Jim, that part of the problem with Vince is his diet.
That's exactly right. Go ahead. I'm agreeing with you on that.
All I was going to say is he needs to start his day, I think, with a better breakfast, and that would maybe produce better results for the wrestling product.
I can tell you how Vince starts his day. He gets up, or at least he did 25 years ago. He gets up probably even before daylight, especially in the wintertime hours, and he immediately works out in his home gym, and then he starts working. And he drinks coffee, and he eats only bland, tasteless food, and then he works out more, and then he works more. Never once did I see in Vince McMahon's kitchen on his shelf a box of delicious cereal that he could have started his day off with a smile and been healthy at the same time. But now, you don't have to worry, folks out there, about being like Vince McMahon, because you can be healthy and have a delicious cereal and put a smile on your face the first thing in the morning with our friends at Magic Spoon. Because Magic Spoon is the only, I would have to say this, in the entire world, certainly in this country, but I think the only example in the entire world of cereal that tastes good and still isn't loaded full of sugar and carbs and junk. Magic Spoon is keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, low-carb, and GMO-free. 0 sugar, 11 grams of protein, 3 net grams of carbs per serving. You can put it in a bowl and pour milk on it. You can eat it like candy. You can just sit there like trail mix even. It tastes, I don't know how they do this. It's filled with mysticism and black magic that they can make this taste this good and have no shit involved in it. And right now, you can build your very own custom variety box from cocoa, fruity, frosted, and blueberry, plus the brand new flavors, including peanut butter and cinnamon. Go to magicspoon.com/Jim, Jim, and use the code Jim, Jim, for free shipping. You can build your own custom variety box of all of the flavors you like, and it's backed with the 100% happiness guarantee. If you don't like it, they refund your money, no questions asked. Our friends, our sponsors, our favorite breakfast cereal, magicspoon.com/Jim. Use the code Jim for free shipping on a box of this badass breakfast food.
Well, Jim, I want to get to some cameos in a minute, but first, let me ask you a quick question that was sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Remy Rossell in New Brunswick. It's a picture of you at the desk, Monday Night Raw, next to Vince, and you're holding a tennis racket with a Santa Claus case.
Yes.
And he wanted to know if you still have the Santa Claus racket you once used in the WWF, and what's the story behind it.
It is currently hanging on my office wall here at Castle Cornette. And what it was, I had it made originally for the Clash of Champions Seasons beatings. That was the Christmas week of 1988, right? It was the Midnight Express against Ric Flair and Barry Windham. And my significant other at the time, her mother was quite a seamstress, a talented sewer, and I found a Santa Claus toilet seat cover because it was Christmas and there were Christmas items were out, and got her to turn the Santa Claus toilet seat cover into a Santa Claus tennis racket cover for Seasons Beatings 88. And that's the story behind it. And obviously, it was Christmas again. You know, I've heard this happens every few years. Christmas comes up. And it was a Christmas again in the 90s, and there I was with the Santa Claus racket.
Did Vince ever ask you anything about your tennis rackets?
What would he ask?
I mean, you're next to him and you have this big Santa Claus tennis racket. I mean, did he ever bring up why the tennis racket? Anything?
Well, no, he knew. I don't think he knew the backstory, and I don't think he'd never asked me. So apparently, he didn't care the backstory of why I carried the tennis racket. But he knew the concept of me carrying the tennis racket was because I'm a rich kid, fucking goofy manager. And think of all the goddamn gimmicks that he had, as they used to say. You know, the WWF is the land of fruits and nuts, and Vince is the head cashew. You know, all the gimmicks he had. He had people with dogs and birds and 2x4s and whatever. It didn't seem out of place, I guess, in his mind. He knew it was my gimmick to whack the baby face over the head with.
All right, Jim obviously was
every once in a while he would eye roll at some of the more outlandish outfits, but once again he's the king of Outland. If it's outlandish, he was the mayor of Outland.
Yeah, he has no right to eye roll at anyone else's outfits.
Well, there you go.
Well, let's get to some cameo reviews. And of course, what happened was we've been talking about this recently because The Undertaker did one and then New Jack did one. And so many different wrestlers are doing it. And a lot of wrestling fans want you to do cameos. So in order to, I guess, in a way, expose you to what else is out there in the playing field, we have been checking out some of the other cameos and talking about the pricing. And we're going to do that again here today. Jim, oh, look at this. Warhorse is on Cameo.
Oh, wait. The guy that rules ass? The ass ruler?
How much do you think?
The ruler of all ass in the world.
How much do you think Warhorse charges?
You know, I got to be fair about this. I've discovered, since we originally made fun, the particular talent involved does not get all that money. A significant chunk, from what I understand, goes to the service, and obviously they're performing a valuable service. But it's not like we can't knock these people for gouging the folks, because they're not getting all this money. And of course, this is before taxes and everything. So I would say, with the service getting a fair chunk, and taxes and license and everything like that, old whorehouse ought to be charging about what? $350?
Well, let me just add to that. what you're talking about is not even taking into account the wrestlers that work for WWE, and this would fall under their third-party deals, so now WWE gets a cut, which is probably why The Undertaker was $1,000 per cameo.
Well, and his was a limited number, too. I believe they were doing something special.
Warhorse charges $15.
So he probably ends up with about $3.50.
What would you like to hear? Here are your three options. Warhorse's holiday message, Warhorse's birthday celebration message, or Warhorse giving a pep talk.
Oh, let's hear Warhorse's pep talk.
All right, here it is.
Reggie! It's Santa Horse. I'm making my list. I'm checking it twice. I'm trying to see who's naughty and who's nice. And let's be honest, it's nice being naughty, but you haven't been a naughty little kitty this year at all, have you? You've been a good kitty. You've been staying off drapes. You know, you're not clawing up the couch. You know, you're not leaving fur balls all over the bed. You're not doing any of that stuff. And also, Santa Horse has a lot of respect for anyone who can take a dump in a box and get somebody else to clean it and get away with it. So, you know, mad props to you there, Reggie. Anyways, I want you to have a very Merry Xmas, a very Happy New Year, and I might get you, you know, maybe a new scratching poster. What's something heavy metal that cats like? I don't know. Maybe we can go ahead and take a look at some catnip. I might get you a nice big bag of catnip. But anyways, I get sidetracked. I don't want to spoil the surprise. Just remember to always rule ass.
That man just gave a pep talk to a cat for $15 gross. I bet Whorehouse ain't getting a lot of fucking requests.
How much do you think Diamond Dallas Page charges?
Oh my golly! Now pay a recognized international celebrity. He's a motivational speaker. I don't. His word has to be certainly more valuable than Whorehouse's. So I would say 10 times as much as old Whorehouse.
Charges $99.
Well, that's a bargain. That's only, wait a minute, 15, 30, 40, that's only fucking 6 times as much as Whorehouse.
Here's the big question. Do you think he mentions, plugs, or wears a t-shirt advertising DDP Yoga in this?
I'd be disappointed if he didn't. And I'm surprised that he's even doing this at any price, because Page was having problems with his voice a few years ago when he was at the Hall of Fame ceremony. He was really babying his voice. He'd had doctors looking at it. I'm surprised he wastes his valuable verbal skills on just any member of the hoi polloi for $99. I got to hear this.
Well, you know, the thing is about him that he loves money. So here are your options. Pep talk, gift, birthday celebration, or holiday.
Well, we tried pep talk with Whorehouse and we got a lot of Christmas shit. So just the pep talk. He's a motivational speaker.
All right, here it is.
Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas, Al. It's me. It's DDP. That's right, Al. Diamond Dallas Page, the king of Bada Bing, the master of the Diamond Cutter, the 3-time world champion, WWE Hall of Famer, and founder and CEO of DDP Yoga, better known today as DDPY. Why, Al? I'll tell you why. Because I want people to stop calling it just effing yoga. That's why. Okay, I got that off my chest. I don't mind if people call it DDP Yoga, but that Y word? But I'm not here to talk about the greatest transformation app on the planet. I am here to give you a very special holiday greeting from Al Tucker. That's right. I was a little concerned because, you know, it is Christmas and this is the Christmas COVID season. And because of the 19, he said, you got to be all alone. And she said that you were a huge fan of mine and would love to hear, you know, just a little pick-you-up story. So, you know what? It's story time.
He's just starting the story now?
I'll hope to put a little smile on your face. Let's see. The first story.
The first one.
The first story I'm going to tell you, Al, is first of all, I didn't become a wrestler until I was 35. My career didn't take off until I was 40. That was in 1996. So going into end of 96, I'd come up with a whole idea around the NWO, and me, when they came to me to ask me to be part of the NWO, I said no. Like those guys were both really good friends of mine in real life, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. When Nash got his Hall of Fame ring, his speech, he actually thanked me because he said that without me, he probably wouldn't have his beachfront home. And because a lot of times Kev wanted to quit because they were treating him like garbage, and they didn't think he had the talent at the time. And I used to say to him all the time, bro, don't let them beat you, bro.
How long is this going to go?
Biggest names
I'm not sure.
Ever. And that's how we went down. One of the biggest names, especially for big men, maybe the biggest big man of all time. And the
biggest
Scott
big man of all
Hall,
time.
I helped him get a job when nobody would hire him anymore because they tried him at different companies, and he wasn't ready yet. He wasn't ready to get over. And then I created that whole new look for him that, which would become the Diamond Stud.
Did Paige and Russo get along?
Really
I'm just
doing the audition.
And then I created WADA.
Razor Ramon, because that him working with me that year and changing the color of his hair and get rid of that walrus mustache and do that 5 o'clock shadow that he wore so well. No one even recognized him when I came up with that look for him. So it was perfect for him to start his journey back.
All right, I'm calling this one.
What does this have to do with pepping this fucking guy up? Okay, if I'm 7 feet tall like Kevin Nash and I get Diamond Dallas Page to create everything for me, I can be a success.
I do want to see real quick, though, because I said it.
What, you want to see how long that ended up going? You want to skip to the end? Is there a timer on that? A stopwatch? A sundial?
That's
a calendar?
one of the worst things here. There is no clock to show you how long this goes, but I am curious. I just want to start another one to see if he goes right into a yoga pitch again. So give me 1 sec. Let me just check this out.
I love you, Paige. You're wonderful.
Oh, Merry Christmas. That's right, Minnie. It's me. It's DDP. That's right, girl. Diamond Dallas Page, the king of bada bing, the master of the diamond cutter. Take it back, Minnie. Arms out to it. Clench your fist. Hold it up, girl. Yeah. Attention. Shoulders back, just out. At ease. DDP, the 3-time world champion, WWE Hall of Famer, and founder and CEO of DDP Yoga. Better known today, and I know you know this, Minnie, DDPY. Why? For all those people out who are watching this who don't know, I'll tell you why. Because I want people to stop calling it just yoga. Okay.
Now that I got that off my chest.
All right. Well, there's Dallas Page, $99. You get his whole life story, all centered around Dallas Page.
And if he can't remember all of it, he'll make some up. That was classic.
How much do you think Lanny Poffo charges?
Well, I think he's charging in Bitcoin.
Maybe so. $50.
Well, that seems reasonable.
For Leaping Lanny, we have a few options here. Holiday, gift, birthday celebration, one that simply says other, and one that says roast.
Oh, we gotta have roast.
Let's see what this is.
For Shane Ivey, book by Curtis Mullins. Merry Christmas and a happy birthday. That's not the point, though. You need to just move on and divorce Lauren. She is pregnant and needs you gone. Don't be a douchebag, be macho. Or better yet, be a genius. By the way, fuck you for not hiring me. Well, my name is Lanny Poffo, formerly the genius of WWE. And behind me is the Pacific Ocean, Monte, Ecuador. And I just wanted to say thank you for booking this jabroni, and I hope I didn't let you down. So, Shane Ivey, I hope you thought it was amusing. Words and music by Curtis Mullins. Have a beautiful day. Merry Christmas.
Oh, well, that pregnant bitch.
Fuck you for not booking me. Well, this could be good or not so good, but we'll find out. How much do you think the Birdman Coco Beware charges?
Oh, okay. He's got to be up there around $125, $150, I'd say.
$30.
What?
Let's click on one of these.
That's a steal.
Let's try this out.
Hey, Merry Christmas, Derek and Christopher from Steve. I want to say, man, thank y'all for being a big fan of mine all these many years. I want you guys to go out there and have a blast on the Birdman, okay? Enjoy yourself.
Oh, that was quick, in and out.
Well, he got to the point. Well, for $30, what do you expect?
Warhorse.
It's just like one of those old phone sex lines. $30 for 30 seconds.
All right, let's see. We did Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Bret the Hitman Hart. How much do you think he charges?
Oh, that's got to be, what, $200, $250?
$150.
That's a bargain there as well.
Now let's go to this. We'll hear what the Hitman has to say.
Hey, this is Bret the Hitman Hart, and I got a very special happy birthday shout out going out to Joseph. This is coming courtesy of your mom and dad, and I know it's your birthday on May 14th, and you're turning 6 years old, and I just want to wish you all the best. I know your birthday is not going to be the same with all your friends aren't going to be able to come because of this coronavirus, but don't worry, stay strong, stay true, and be good to your mom and dad, because things are going to get better real soon, and you just got to follow the code. But also know, Joseph, that you're an amazing little boy. Everybody loves you, and they want you to have the best birthday that you can. So just know that you are in life the excellence of execution in everything you do, and you are without a doubt the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. You have a great birthday because you're an amazing little guy.
That was nice.
Wow. You know, he actually gets the flavor of this thing. And of course, obviously, the 6-year-old kid probably doesn't know who Bret Hart is, but I mean, his dad's a big fan, and that's why. But that's good. When he grows up, he'll see that and he'll go, "Holy shit!" Well, that's nice. Bret gets the flavor of the thing. Where was that promo? I tell you one thing. When I had to follow Bret in the mid-'90s, when they'd have us lined up to do station IDs, because that's not even a wrestling promo, right? That's just over and over, you know. Hey, be sure to watch WWF Superstars on WABC Channel 7, Saturdays at noon. He couldn't do those savings. He'd be reading off a fucking card. He couldn't get it. WBC Del Boca Vista. He couldn't get it.
And they wish they were on WABC Channel 7. But anyway.
Well, whatever the case may be.
Surprised you knew WABC. Well, you lived in the Northeast, I guess. How much you think Gilbert charges?
Oh, wait a minute now. He just, did he not just have a heart attack?
I believe he did.
Well, then we can't make fun of him. I like Dwayne. He's a nice guy.
So you don't want to hear Gilbert?
Well, now you've fucking backed me into a corner. If I don't want to hear him, then I'm sloughing him off. But let's not make too much fun of him. But let's hear him.
Here's what you get for $20.
What's up, Chris? How you doing, brother man? How you doing? It's the old boy Gilbert here, WWF's longest reigning light heavyweight champion. I love saying that, I really do. But anyway, brother, a friend of yours got a hold of me and said, "Hey, do me a favor there, Gilbert. Get a hold of my boy Chris, will you? He's a teacher, a super dude, and a great dad to his son and daughter, which to me hits me right in the heart, brother. I love my kids. I never knew I could love my kids. I never knew I could love anything so much in my entire life until I saw my kids' faces. And each one of them, man, are my world. So I know yours are your world because your buddy's been telling me that, well, let's just say you the man, brother. You are the man. You should be dad of the year from what I understand. And he said that, well, you're spending another Christmas single. Good, man. Phew. Man, if your ex was a mess, if you know what I mean, then yeah, be glad you're spending it single. You got 2 awesome kids, brother, and that should take up 90% of your love anyway. So, I understand that you are like the greatest guy on the planet, man, and that any woman would be glad to have you as a husband. But you seem to be just a little bit picky, which is good. Because if you fail on the first one, you don't want the second one, man. You want to make sure it's exactly right before you get the second one. Me, myself, I've been with my wife 41 years, brother. 41 years. So I lucked out, rolled a strike the first time. But you gotta remember, man, it's 50-50. And from what I understand, you are like the coolest dude on the face of the earth, according to your buddy. So look, keep that chin up, brother. Keep that smile on. Take care of that boy and that girl, you hear me? Because that brother, that's the world right there, man. That's our future. So, from the Gilbert and your boy, David Dollar. Is he bullcrapping me, David Dollar? I think that's a made-up name. Remember, I'm a wrestler. We make up names, you know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying. Know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying? Anyway, look, brother, you stay great. Like the old Gilbert, go crazy now and then. Let your kids have a ball, man, because I understand you are the best dad in the world. So, brother, you take that to Christmas with you, you hear me? You don't need a woman, because you bad A, you hear me? You bad A, and you got them 2 kids, man. Listen, from the Gilbert and old David Dollar, which I think is a made-up name, but we'll go with it. David Dollar, I want you to wish you the best and merriest Christmas ever, brother. And a happy New Year.
That was worth $20. Absolutely.
I was about to say, that is the best value per dollar of anything on the whole site. Gilbert, I hope he feels better soon. I hope that may have been what brought his attack on. Doing that, but you don't need a woman. Don't worry about it Christmas time if you can't get laid.
I never knew I could love my kids.
There was an awkward pause and a sub-reference there that changed the meaning of that entire sentence.
How much do you think Leo Rush charges?
Oh, good Lord. He charges by the pound. I would say he charges $87.
$30. Let's hear good old Leo.
This is the man of the hour, Leo Rush, and I just want to give a huge shout out to Pro Wrestling Galaxy on Instagram. Thank you so much for being a fan of myself and GCW. Listen, we're changing the game. And that starts with the man of the hour, Leo Rush. So appreciate you. Thank you. Don't be too sad about that unfollow. It'll come back one day. Trust me. Merry Christmas and happy holidays.
Oh, that was nice.
Was he doing community service work out on the side of the road? Why was there the traffic sounds going past him?
Well, he appears to be in his backyard from the visual we have here.
Does he live near the overpass? Why is that? It sounded like he was next to the road.
He may. I mean, there's a big power line behind him. I see that.
Well, maybe that's what's causing the power, the electric frequency is interfering with his brain waves. That's why he's made some of his decisions.
One of the great promos of ECW, Raven. How much do you think Raven charges?
Ooh, $75 to $100.
$50.
See, some of these are deals. Some people have inflated senses of themselves.
Let's go to this.
My name is Raven, professional wrestling superstar, but come on, you know that. Let's see, this is for Willie J, and it's booked by Kev. Willie J. Any relation to Dr. J? Is he your father? Anyway, you guys grew up on ECW and are in a band called Super Jerk together. Is the band called Super Jerk together? Or just Super Jerk and you're both in it? Either way, could you wish him a happy birthday? No. Now I can wish him a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Willie J. Happy birthday. And also, the dolphins are not dogs that stayed in the ocean. Of course they're not. They're cats that stayed in the ocean. No, they're not. They're,
What?
No, they're, dolphins are dolphins. And they get caught in nets when you're making tuna or something, and it's sad because they're smart. I don't know. Bye-bye and bye-bonds. Happy birthday, Willie J. Quote the Raven, nevermore.
Bye-bye and bye-bonds. He's been doing that for years. Raven did give me one of he quoted me one of the most perceptive pieces of wisdom that I have ever heard anyone utter one time. He mentioned that when he first starts seeing a lady, he has her lick his ass, because then if things go south later on, he's always got that over him.
If you purchased that, wouldn't you be upset that he was being Scotty there? He wasn't being Raven.
Well, is there any difference?
Well, Raven was kind of a brooding, dark character, not, hey, this is Raven. How you doing?
Well, do you want somebody to pay? Do you want to pay someone to brood at you?
If I was
Be sullen?
If I was getting a Raven promo, I would want him to be Raven. Yes. Well, let's see this one. How much do you think the Brooklyn Brawler charges?
Oh, Lombardi. I would say $17.50. Because he's a guy that's careful with money, but he doesn't want to gouge anybody.
He's $50, and there are a few options here. 4 of them are birthday celebration. One of them is question.
Question.
You'd like to hear question. Okay.
Hey, Mark, this is the Brooklyn Brawler. I would have to say I agree with you 100%. My favorite era was the late 80s, early 90s, because I went in 1989, I went from Steve Lombardi to the Brooklyn Brawler, and I was managed by one of the greatest managers of all time, Bobby the Brain Heenan. It was a great run. I was all over the TV. And as far as Ultimate Warrior, I wrestled Ultimate Warrior over 40 times. He was one of the greatest guys I ever met. He was great in the ring and outside of the ring. He was a tremendous guy. One time I was on the highway in Texas. My rental car broke down. I had no way to get anywhere. Out of nowhere, a limousine pulls up, and who is it? The Ultimate Warrior. He says, "Get in the car, you're with me for the rest of the tour." So I called up the rental car company, tell him where the car was, and he took me everywhere. He was a great guy. Even in the Hall of Fame, he said to me, "Be prepared to stand up." He goes, "I'm going to give you a shout out and say you took all my punishment and kept a great attitude." He was a great guy, and I would have to admit, I don't have a bad word to say about him. And as far as the Hall of Fame, it's not up to me. It's up to you and all the fans to reach out to WWE and tell them that you want the Brooklyn Brawler in the Hall of Fame. That's how it works.
And then it's up to Vince.
Well, there it is. The Brooklyn Brawler, Steve Lombardi.
Oh, that was it. Well, it's so things can happen. We found somebody that had something nice to say about the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if WWE was doing another hit piece DVD, he would change his story very quickly.
Did he shout Lombardi out during the Hall of Fame ceremony? I can't remember.
I can't remember either.
Okay.
He may have, though. He may have.
Well, even if he did, trivia question, guys out there, anybody, did he shout out the Brooklyn Brawler, and did the Brooklyn Brawler indeed get a chance to stand up and wave? That's a good question.
Well, let's get a couple more before we wrap up this segment. Here is one. I guess he's listed as his real name, not his wrestling name, but Andy Williams, better known as The Butcher. How much do you think he charges?
I was about to say, who the fuck is Andy Williams? Wait a minute, wasn't he a crooner in the 60s? Didn't he have a variety show on NBC, the Andy Williams Show?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know he turned to wrestling. How much? I would say he's going to be at least $22.
$40. Let's hear him now.
What? Oh, hey, what's up, Katie? It's Andy of Every Time I Die's fame and the AEW's Butcher guy. So we've met before, and you said to me, "You're Andy," and I said, "You're Katie." And that's a true statement. I used to have work for Vans, and the dude that I worked for was a great guy, and we would go meet like famous people. And I would always feel really weird, like, oh man, I can't like eat lunch with this dude. And then he would be like, "Why, you're Andy Williams?" And I would say, "Yeah." And he would be like, "Yeah, you're fucking Andy Williams." And I would go, "Yeah." And then he literally meant that I'm a person, and that person's a person. And it
just barely, apparently.
So you should always just treat people like people, and then you'll get treated like a person back, you know? And I think a lot of times dudes in fucking positions of bands and wrestlers and stuff like that, like, they think they're above it. And I never want to think I'm above it. I want to be below. Because there's only one place to go from below, and that's up. So. Just like you said, I'm Andy, you are Katie. And yeah, you fucking rip. And Dan thinks you rip. So that's all that matters. Says you're a huge fan here of my work as a wrestler, as the Butcher. Here it just says, huge fan of the Butcher, which I don't know where you get your meat from. It could be, like here I go to a place called Federal Meat Market. It's awesome. Boy. They have great butchers there. And that's cool. I'm glad that you have a good relationship with your butchers. You should. You're putting that in your body. You're putting, you know what I mean? I'm not going to say the words that I was going to say because it would have been sounding really dirty. But
they should have had Eddie Kingston do this for him.
Yeah,
you should know that. You should know the person
Kingston get 50% by doing all of this guys.
Paper and
Cameos.
Nice, you know, to have a relationship with them.
Is this guy still going on?
The character that I play for AEW. I appreciate that.
Wait a minute. The character I play for
of
AEW.
a 43-year-old man that looks like an uncle and has a skullet that just beats on people that wear tight pants. And that's cool. I like it. Picture in picture, not your favorite. I got to admit, not my favorite either. It's strange. I always pay attention when I'm watching my own matches. I pay attention to the fucking commercial.
No wonder they don't let this guy speak.
That's strange. It's really weird. Yeah. And it says here that you love Hana. Well, I'm going to say this. Hana is absolutely the best thing that I've ever achieved in my life. So I love her too, very much. She's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. It also says here to ham it up. And I'm going to tell you, last night I had Hana made for the live stream thing that we did. She made.
All right, I'm calling this. I don't think I could sit through
this fucking nitwit. And let me tell you something, you fucking fat, fucking balding, fucking freaky looking piece of shit.
Where's this coming from?
When he said, "Oh, let's talk about the character I portray on AEW." That's all you're doing is portraying a fucking wrestler because you ain't one, you miserable sack of shit. I'd like to kick you in the fucking balls. They have to insult the wrestling business even on a goddamn cameo greeting to somebody who probably has no idea who the fuck this idiot is to begin with. And they have to insult the business on their fucking cam. He has a different name for everything he does. I wonder what his name is when he goes out and walks his dog. He wants to be below everything. Well, I got news for you, Turd Blossom. You've submerged past pretty much everything I can think of. And he's goddamn has no. Can you imagine getting a fucking, if it had existed in those days, getting a cameo from Bruiser Brody? And he said, "Oh yeah, well, it depends on what my name when I do this is so and so, and I play a wrestler on TV and beats around the bush. And what would you like me to talk about? Because I'm just like everybody else." They don't want to pay for a greeting from some dope, some nitwit, some mush-mouth twit that's just like everybody else. The reason why they're paying for a cameo is from a fucking star. Act like one. He's supposedly a musician, allegedly a wrestler, and that's his personality when he's talking to his fans in public? Fuck you, you waste of flesh, you human fucking waterbed.
Jesus.
That's a goddamn cameo for you right there, for free, Mr. Meat Gentleman.
He wants to be below, which probably explains why he isn't over.
Work on that one, come back and see me.
One last one this week.
One last one.
How much you think Greg the Hammer Valentine charges?
Oh, God. Well, see, now, from the golden era, he's got to be at least $150.
All right, let's hear this.
What are you going to say?
$100.
Okay, well, not even as much as I thought it would be.
Greg the Hammer Valentine.
Hey, Jared. This is Greg the Hammer Valentine, WWE Hall of Famer. I understand you're getting ready to have a big birthday. You're going to be 33 years old on December the 11th. Your life has just begun. Those are the greatest years of all. I understand you've had some rough times, but buckle up, buddy. You're going to make it. And I understand you're from the Pacific Northwest up in Oregon. I'm from Seattle, man, so let's do it all together.
And there it is.
Well, there you go. Short and to the point, but at least he didn't say hi. You want to talk about the character I play on the Mid-Atlantic Wrestling? Yeah. See, now you put me in a bad mood. You know what? I'll tell you exactly what ought to happen. Somebody ought to sue this Andy Williams or this Butcher or this whatever he is when he plays. You know, he's probably in one of those fucking trash metal fucking bands also that doesn't actually play their instruments. They just take a fucking hacksaw or a goddamn crowbar and saw across the strings. But somebody ought to sue him for selling these cameos by impersonating a wrestler. People are buying cameos, buying shout-outs, buying video messages from a professional wrestler, and he admits he's not even a real one. He just tries to play one on television. If only somebody could take a case like that for fraud and misrepresentation and chicanery.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. Still to the rest.
Folks, if you've been the victim of fraud, shenanigans, chicanery, tomfoolery, or any other type of who shot John, the one, the only, the man of the hour, the tower, the power of the man that's too sweet to be sour, Stephen P. New of newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084, is the man you need to call. You need to have that number on speed dial. If the world is fucking with you, folks, Stephen P. New can get even. That's why we say, get even with Stephen. Whether it's been the cancer caused by Roundup, or the defective earplugs manufactured by 3M, or the opioid addictions caused by the big pharmaceutical companies, or now most recently, as we have found out, the mistreatment of the elderly, our seniors, in some rest homes, as well as the entire city in West Virginia that was given cancer by an unscrupulous big corporation, whoever it may be. The downtrodden little people make a comeback and hulk up and become the triumphant big people when Stephen P. New is in their corner in a court of law. The consigliere of the cult of Cornette. He could have talked Nixon out of Watergate, folks, but he wouldn't have done it because he's an honest guy. Stephen P. New is for you, 888-692-8084. newlawoffice.com. He's a fine man. As a matter of fact, the next class action suit he starts, Brian, is going to be on behalf of people who use their left and right turn indicators.
Who will it be against? People who don't?
People who don't.
Oh, interesting.
There's been a lifelong civil war amongst those two groups.
Well, Jim, it is now time for our promised watch-along, and this is one a lot of people have been curious about. They've seen the tape. It's one of the greatest pay-per-views of all time, Great American Bash 1989 in Baltimore. And it's you and Paulie Dangerously in a tuxedo match in the midst of this great card, and it actually is better than it had really any right to be. But let's get the backstory of this match.
Well, okay, there's a couple of backstories, and we have gone in depth on the Midnight Express and I's tenure in WCW, and then our first dealings with Herd when TBS bought the company, etc. We could go greatly in depth there, but we've already done it. Look it up on YouTube. But to summarize the situation, Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson had quit and left for the WWF the previous September in the midst of our program with the Midnight and the Horsemen. And so we won the World Tag Team title, but then they were gone. So at that point, we were halfway babyface anyway, even though it was a heel program. We were the sympathetic babyfaces in the deal, and we had nobody to work with. And so that's when I pitched Dusty the idea of bringing in Paul Lee, Dennis Condrey, and Randy Rose. Real briefly, when Dennis had left Crockett and left us in March of 1987, he'd intended to get out of the business completely. But we later found out, since we hadn't talked to him at that time, he moved to Denver. Well, Denver was just a hop, skip, and a jump to Las Vegas. And Vegas is where Vern Gagne's AWA was doing its TV tapings back then, the ESPN TV show. The AWA was lingering in its dying days. They weren't really doing any business. They didn't have a full house show schedule anymore, but they had that TV on ESPN everybody saw. And Dennis had got talked into rejoining Randy Rose and coming to work for him. They were looking for talent at the time, and they put Dennis and Randy with Paul Lee. And for obvious reasons, I'm not being a prick here. I want to say that at that point, people compared Paul Lee to me. So as Vern had used the Rockers, Jannetty and Michaels, when Crockett had the Rock and Roll Express, now he's got the original Midnight Express, which was legitimate, with Paul Lee, which is kind of Jim Cornette flavor. So they didn't do any business. Nobody was going to do any business in the AWA at that point in time, but they'd been on the television. And I pitched Dusty. I said, it will mean something here because of our history. And that's the situation. I did not want to turn babyface just for the sake of turning babyface, but we were leaning that way in the people's eyes, and this we could sink our teeth into because of our personal history, because the fans knew it, because everybody had a protagonist and an antagonist in this thing. We couldn't just switch babyface and me be a babyface manager and start suddenly wrestling other heels that we had nothing to do with. In this thing, Bobby had a reason to be mad at Dennis because Dennis had left, but in storyline, we had kicked him out, so Dennis had a reason to be mad at all of us. Dennis had a reason to be mad at Stan because he replaced him. Randy Rose had a reason to hate Bobby Eaton because he was the guy that Dennis Condrey took as a partner and then hit it big after the Midnight Express had been regional stars. Me and Paul Lee were perfect across from each other. You could believe we hated each other. So that's why it worked. And Dusty, as Booker, let us shoot the angle. And as I said, he questioned, I mentioned this one time, he questioned, well, do you want to bring Dennis back? I said, yes, we've talked, this will work, right? And he let us do the angle that I laid out on TV, them whacking me with the phone, I said, a little youth kid. And then we were set to start the house show matches and etc. a couple of weeks later. Well, coincidentally with that, that's when Dusty got fired as Booker. TBS had taken over. And all of a sudden now, Jim Crockett's the interim booker in December and part of January. We start our house show matches. Now we're, basically minimized because they didn't know what the fuck was going to go on. And I could work with Dusty. It's not like I couldn't work with Jimmy Crockett, but this was already an idea that was in progress. And they were probably going to change everything anyway. So Jimmy Crockett didn't like Randy Rose. He thought we ought to get Dennis a new partner. So he booked the finish for the midnight match on Starrcade 88, the pay-per-view. We went over. We didn't want to. We wanted them to fuck us and beat us to get some credibility, get some heat. Nah, we'll put you guys. Okay, so they did jump us and get some heat afterwards to keep the thing going. But then that's when TBS stepped in and wasn't going to fly the managers, wanted to save expenses, so wasn't going to take the managers to the house shows. So the midnight match was going out in the arenas without me and Paul, which was the key to the thing. We offered to fly ourselves and pay our own way to the shows. They didn't want us to do it because the other managers would get upset. Then they rescinded that, but that was already Crockett's last act as booker before George Scott came in, was to book the pay-per-view in Chicago in February as a loser of the fall leaves WCW match. He wanted to get rid of Randy Rose and get Dennis a new partner. George Scott then comes in, and we have our meeting with him, the one and only one we had, and we find out he's not going to do anything with us, and we're making plans to get out of there. Well, of course, Dennis ribs everybody in February in Chicago and said he didn't come back to have this angle fucked up, and he didn't ask for a new partner, and so he just no-showed the whole thing and left again. So that fucked that up. And then after that pay-per-view is when we went in and told JR that we were giving our notice because George Scott wasn't going to use us. He had no idea who we were. We didn't want to work for him, and we were just going to take time off until TBS smartened up and fired George Scott because we could tell he'd been in a nap for the previous 6 years. So our last program on the way out was Paulie got a new team, Samu and Fatu, the Samoan SWAT team. And with George Scott as the booker, and especially with us finishing, they just beat the shit out of us every night for a month and beat us. And once again, you had George Scott telling them, even before we gave our notice, I ain't going to use these guys, just get over. And they're new and coming in and trying to get over, so the only bumps they would take was for each other when they, fucked up and hit each other with a headbutt. Because they're trying to get over strong. So the matches were the shits on our behalf because we couldn't do anything. And there was no dynamic with the Samoans other than Paulie was in their corner. So then we left. Meanwhile, they fired George Scott a week before we left. Our notice was longer than his fucking employment. But we said we still want to leave. And because we've said we were going to already, we had some dates we had taken for Dundee and Continental. And, Bobby had a bad knee. We wanted to rest up and just get away from it. So we made the deal to come back in May in the World Tag Team title match or Tag Team title tournament on television and start back full-time in June at or near the Clash of Champions where we'd be in the World Tag title tournament finals. That left the loose end of I'd never gotten even with Paul Lee because we won the Chicago match in February, but we didn't beat him. So the booking committee at the time, which was Jim Ross, Kevin Sullivan, Eddie Gilbert, and a variety of the other people, arranged to at least clean that up at the July Great American Bash pay-per-view by having this match between me and Paul Lee. And just to remind everybody we were mad at each other, when we're going in the tag team tournament semifinals on the June Clash of Champions against the Freebirds, on the way to the ring, Paul Lee comes from behind me, hits me with a loaded tennis racket of his own, knocks me goofy, and then the Express is out there alone against the three Freebirds, and they get fucked, and the inference is if I'd have been there to seen what was happening with the third guy, then I could have stopped it or whatever the fuck, but anyway, I put a little heat on Paul Lee. And by the way, that was the Fort Bragg, North Carolina clash where it was 130 degrees in that building. And when he hit me and I went down and I sold it, the EMTs carried me out, and they weren't smart. So they wanted to take me to the fucking hospital. Because, I said, I just need water. Well, you're dehydrated and you got knocked out and this and that. And they wanted to give me a CAT scan. And I had to somebody came and ran some interference for me. And I said, I've got to go home. I've got to go home. And I went to get in blah, blah, blah. But anyway, I didn't go to the hospital. So anyway, this match was booked to be a tuxedo match because of the people involved in the booking committee at that time, the only ones that really had any creative input that would have been involved in this, and I wasn't on the committee, so I didn't hear the conversation, was Eddie Gilbert, Kevin Sullivan, and JR. And I'm pretty sure that probably JR got it past heard by saying, well, we'll put him in a tuxedo match, because he'd seen that I think they did it with Finkel. And Eddie Gilbert, of course, was probably saying, okay, Memphis, and we'll do clothes ripping, a Jimmy Hart kind of thing.
They did it with Duggan and DiBiase.
Duggan and DiBiase in Mid-South, which was more serious, obviously. But anyway, the point is, I want to get it even with Paul E., so I'm going to fucking take this regardless what the stipulations are. Because, and I don't mean I want to get even with him personally, but I mean for Jim Cornette on television, I needed to get the last word over this fucker that had whacked me over the head and busted me open with his phone. So we're going to have a tuxedo match. The night before, we're in Philadelphia at a house show at the Civic Center, and it's the Midnight Express, and my God, it was a 10-man tag with the Freebirds and the Samoans against the Midnight Express, and maybe I can't remember
Dr. Death, probably.
Dr. Death was involved, yes. Anyway, Gordy decides to be Terry Gordy and go crazy. I'm standing on the ring apron because it's a big fucking chaos, brawl going on. And Gordy just picks up the table at ringside over his head and is going to throw it in over the top rope. Well, I'm standing there. So I jump off the apron of the ring as the table goes by me, and I land on the floor fine, except that's when they had added those goofy fucking mats around the ring that caused more injuries than they saved. And my left foot landed on the edge of the mat, and my knee went sideways, even though I was wearing my knee braces. My knee went out. When I say went out, because I had no ACL, if you don't have an anterior cruciate ligament, your knee can bend different directions than it's supposed to. When that happens and it tears cartilage, it causes bleeding, swells up, gets tight, hurts like a motherfucker, etc. So I'm like, fuck, I've blown my fucking knee the night before and the pay-per-view the following day was an afternoon show. So goddamn it, that night went back to the hotel in Baltimore, stayed to Red Roof at the airport, and the next day, he got down there about noon. I'd been icing it all night. It was swollen up. It was tight. It's fucking hurting, but I'm going to do this one way or the other, right? And to show you the difference in those days and now, and in recent times in between, I went to everybody in the locker room. Do you have a pain pill? I found 2 mismatched pain pills from 2 different people in a wrestling locker room. Now, if I'd have been asking for weed or cocaine, I probably couldn't ever fucking carried it all. But pain pills, because they actually knew how to fucking work and to do stupid shit, right? So I take the 2 mismatched pain pills and put the knee brace on, wrap it up good, put the knee brace on real fucking tight, and I sit down to talk with Paul, and the first thing I'm going to tell him to do is go for my knee, so if I can get to the ring without limping, and he starts working on the leg, then I've got a reason to limp. And of course, and Eddie and Kevin were the ones that came in, and they're like, I guess 6 or 7 minutes or whatever. And they wanted us to have a funny match, and rip the clothes and do the thing. And they know you guys would just get Jim over with, kick the powder. Okay, that's what they gave us. But and even Eddie was looking at Paul, but he said it to both of us. But he was like, don't you guys try to do too much wrestling stuff. Okay. Well, then as soon as they closed the door, it was, okay, here, now let's figure out what we're going to do. We were not going to do comedy because even the boys at that time believed we hated each other, much less the fans. And this is before we even did for a while there. And we weren't going to try to go out there and do drop kicks and hip tosses and body slams, but we knew we had to have a fight, as realistic possible a fight as Jim Cornette and Paulie Dangerously would have if they really hated each other. We might not be able to wrestle and we might not be able to fight very well, but we would try. And we would do some damage just by virtue of the fact that we're both about the same size with the same athletic background. That's to the people. That's the picture we wanted to project. I knew, and it's not a secret, anybody can watch the videotape, in this instance, I was the veteran, and Paul never could work that good to begin with. That was the flaw in his game, is anytime he had to do anything physical. So on his punches, I said, Paul, just don't try to give me brain damage, but don't hit me in the face. Punch me in the side of the head. The hard point of your forehead straight across over to the other side, boom, I'm hitting myself. I said, punch me pretty good, but right there. Don't hit me in the face, but don't try to throw a working punch. Because your working punches don't look very good. Later on, you'll see he tried to throw working punches. But otherwise, we laid out the simple, I'm going to start hot. I'm going to fucking get his jacket off to give the people something. He's going to come out and he's going to blind me, and then he's going to take his phone. And I told him, I said, I've got this knee brace on that's metal on both sides. Don't hit the top of my kneecap. You'll break my leg. Hit the sides of the knee brace as hard as you can with the phone. This is important because later on, after I was sitting in front of him for 3 hours, the first thing he does is go for the wrong fucking leg. But we basically just built, instead of having every move laid out for ourselves, even we knew we had to feel that part. We just had the flow of the match. I'm going to start hot. I'm going to get the jacket. He's going to blind me. He's going to get some heat on me, give me a reason to limp. I'm going to try to fight back with the cummerbund thing. We put that in. He'll try to, I'll get it and try to choke him, and he'll fucking stop me, blah, blah, blah. All the things that we'll go over. And then basically the finish. It wasn't called step for step because we probably wouldn't have been able to remember it to begin with, but we had the skeleton, the outline. And the thing is, we try to do and pretty much came off doing as everybody, and everybody can be the judge when they watch it. But at the time, it got over in the house. It's the only decent house WCW drew all year. Sold out the Baltimore Arena, the Civic Center. It got over with the people, and we didn't embarrass ourselves as far as doing silly shit that we were obviously cooperating with each other on. And even JR and Bob Caudle, because they figured they knew what the tone of the thing was going to be, and kind of started calling it like a fight at a strip club at the first part. And then once he slapped me in the face, I think at that point, then it kind of woke them up a little bit, and they're like, hey, these guys really don't like each other, type of commentary from there on out. And that's the thing. Paulie's punches didn't hurt at all. They looked like shit. But when he slapped me, it rattled. I saw stars. So that's what we were trying to do. And under the limits of a tuxedo match where I couldn't actually pin him, but I had to rip his clothes off and everybody got to see him in his blue undies. And I was kind of disappointed in that, because when I got my clothes ripped off and down to my underwear in the Superdome or on any major show, I had big boxer shorts with hearts on them or whatever. He just wore the skid mark shit that he walked in there with that day. That was his real underwear. He was an amateur back then. But anyway, otherwise than that, can you think of anything I have missed in explaining why and how this came about and our mindset going into it?
Well, a couple things we should mention. One, Paulie is 23 years old here. So for anyone who's seen MJF in recent years as 23, here's Paulie at 23 years old. You were what, 27?
Yeah, because this is July of 89, so I was 27. I wouldn't be 28 till September. So I was the veteran.
You guys would also go back out there later in the show for War Games.
Yeah, did we watch that? If we didn't watch it, we talked about it here not long ago.
We've definitely not watched that War Games. No.
We didn't watch it, but we talked about it. It was one of the forgotten War Games. But we couldn't. I hated being a manager in the War Games because you can't do anything. So that was, we had our spotlight earlier in the night.
You guys did interviews earlier in the show with Gordon Soley, who was the backstage interviewer for Bash 89. The ringside team, like you said, Jim Ross and Bob Caudle. I don't know if there's too much else to cover. I guess the only other note would be there would be a big change behind the scenes. What, a month later, Ric Flair would take over the booking committee.
Yes, well, that's the booking committee was a bunch of equal people that had no power over one another, and Herd was trying to run it. And that's why the first several months of the year was such a mess. After George Scott, it got worse, actually. And that's when Flair got hot and said, somebody needs to take control of this. And he demanded the book. So then he could choose people that worked under him. Unfortunately, he couldn't choose. Herd was still involved, which was the problem of the whole thing, as we've mentioned many times. But yeah, this, as I said, was the only good house really they drew all year. And that was, Flair finally said, this is getting worse instead of better. And he took the book, and until the following February, things had come back, as we've mentioned, the pay-per-views, the television ratings, some of the houses, not many, but then Herd wouldn't get out of his way. Tell them how to watch this thing. That's what you need to do.
What you want to do is go to the WWE Network, under WCW pay-per-views in the in-ring category, you want to go to either 1989 or Great American Bash and look for Great American Bash 1989. It'll be right there. We are at 42 minutes and 49 seconds into the pay-per-view event. Of course, there's a tab at the bottom you could jump to, Paulie Dangerously versus Jim Cornette. But if you don't want to click that tab, 42 minutes and 49 seconds into Great American Bash 1989. With that said, we will do a 5-second countdown. Press play at the end of the word now. The W end of now, not the N end of now, the W end of now. And we will begin right now. Well, don't use that now. No, don't do that.
No.
After the 5-second countdown.
Yes.
5. See, now I messed myself up. Let's do this again, ladies and gentlemen. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Press play now.
And also, I remembered it was the Road Warriors, along with Dr. Death and the Midnight against the Freebirds and the Samoans. There's the 2 rings. There's the Baltimore Civic Center. I loved Baltimore. Sabatino's, Little Italy. And Paul is strutting. Look at that, by the way. Svelte, young 23-year-old man. Who would have thought he would mature into a full-fledged twin of Alfred Hitchcock?
He has a tennis racket.
He's got as I mentioned, he had hit me with a racket on the Clash of Champions the previous month. Now he's bringing that out. He's mocking me. He's got all the gimmicks. He's got the hair. Who would have thought I'd have more hair than Paul at this period of time?
Did you see the security guard just block Gary Juster from walking?
Yeah. He probably didn't know who Gary was at that point. Anyway, as you see Paul strutting around the cock of the walk, as they say, certainly some kind of dick. Nice little pop for the baby face, I must say. Coming to the ring. And now watch this walk. I am trying to walk so flat-footed. See, NWA's #1 WWF stinks is what they blocked out. But look at the look on my face. I'm trying to look mean, but actually I'm gritting. I'm thinking, I got to get there without limping. Boom, boom, boom. I would have been taking a lot more time strutting, and also my mouth is fucking dry from the pain pills. My mouth it feels like roofing tile. You'll constantly see me. I will never put any weight on my left leg. Anyway, the great camera work. I took a swing at Paul with the, is that Donnie Libel down there? I think it is. I took a swing at Paul with the racket. Yeah. Got the cotton mouth from the pain pills, telling Nick Patrick, hurry up and make me get rid of this racket and turn my back here. So he's supposed to rush me, and I've got him. And I walk across the ring like George Costanza's father. And this gives me enough to where I can throw it. Now, Paul's getting his powder. See, I throw this out to the people. Somebody's got a nice souvenir, and boom. And I get hit with the powder, and I'm blind, and now I can go down, and now he's got to get his phone. And what does he do? My right leg. He's going to my right leg, and I'm screaming. The other leg already. Other leg. Look, other leg, other leg. Now he's just hitting everything. And now he's just hitting all of them. And look, and I said, hit it as hard as you can, and he's trying to work the fucking blah, blah, blah. But anyway, damage has been done. And now, and I had said, get this jacket off of me so I can move around a little bit. And Paulie, he has, if he could have ever mastered the physical part of it, he's got the facials, he's got the aggression. He just never, and he's trying to do the working punch, and he's doing the open the hand and slap kind of Razor Ramon thing. But anyway, at least if he can keep track of, I keep putting my left leg out flat on the mat, but he doesn't know that means that's the one I want him to kick. Now you're just kicking me in the fucking ass. And of course, it is literally hard for me to bend. You can see the brace on underneath the pants. But now look at those punches. I'm like, all right, fuck. Just anyway, we're selling here. We're selling. Other leg. Thank you, Paul. Wrap it around the ropes. And see, this is when the announcers, they start getting it a minute because I'm selling like I'm in pain. We're not trying to be funny. even though it's obviously we're not athletically prepared to do this like all the other guys are. And then here comes a cummerbund spot. He's going to choke me with it. This is old as the hills. And as soon as he chokes me with it and gets a little heat on me, then I'll back him up in the corner and get loose, and I'll try to go after him and blah, blah, blah.
You know, you say that there are so many examples of you being in matches and being physical. There aren't that many of Paul doing anything physical in any matches.
Oh, God. When you would grab a hold of him to throw a punch or something, see, I need to fight back from underneath a little bit. And see, he was supposed to drop the cummerbund, he remembered. But anyway, now I've got it. Boom. If you'd grab him by the neck, it was like grabbing a leg of a table. He was so tensed up. He was never comfortable being physical in the ring. He could do all that like this. He could look mad, but he didn't want to. And see, we didn't call this. He goes in the corner and starts slapping me around. I'm selling a little bit, but I'm thinking I got to do something. So I shove him back, try to kick him in the balls. He gets mad, spits at me. I didn't know that was coming. So oh shit, I'm going to go after him, but I'm selling the leg. I can't. We just did that because what else would you fucking do? And then he gets me out on the floor. The one thing I'd planned for this match, I wanted to take a bump straight backwards off the apron onto the floor. Not like fucking Mick Foley did, at the Clash, but I could do a good enough one that it would have been right, but I couldn't do it with that leg. And I'm trying to tell him something here, and I can't remember what the fuck it was, but he was hard to work with because he didn't have any experience working, and he wasn't doing natural things, but that I would feed up for shit, but I wouldn't know what was coming. And I said, here, give me a post, right? Okay, boom, at least that. There's George Napolitano. Is that Linda Rufa? That was old.
Damn right it is.
Damn right it is. Linda and Lynn McAllister from Atlanta was up there. Anyway, the point is, and if you're watching this with the sound up a little bit, the people are not shitting on this. People have kind of got with it. And I needed to sell some so they'd get firmly behind it. Now he's just hot dogging. And here's the crawl, right? I'm going to get this cocksucker. And this, finally, bam, when he smacked me. And this is finally when JR and Bob Caudle started waking up. And the people were like, oh, shit. And we're about to go home here. I know he's going to miss. This is probably the only match I ever had where I didn't miss the elbow drop. Because I was the baby face, and also I couldn't get up that far. And so that's where I told him back. Yeah, back me I get him back here in a second. Back me in the corner, just back me around. I can't really sell because I have no balance with that bad left leg, and he's hitting me, so I'm just kind of boom, and finally the Hulk up, right? You got to. Oh, shit. No. When I kicked him with the left leg because I couldn't put my weight on the right one. Now, here we go. Now, at least, only number 3 was a potato. Number 3 was a live round.
Nick
1,
Patrick
2, and
really
4
selling this.
Was okay. And then I said, just on your knees, boom. And I couldn't shift my weight from one foot to the other like normal, so I'm nodding his head a little bit here. But still, boom. Tell the people, you want me to take it off? I go, yes. Shit. At least I'm thinking we're about done with this thing, and we haven't shit the bed yet. Help me out, Paul. Let's turn over. Let me get this thing off of you. Can you give me some help? There we go. The shirt, and oh yeah, this looks like holy hell, because I had to say, get me in a headlock, and then the double knock. He didn't come that quick, but we didn't have that far to run anyway. And here he goes for his second bag of powder. And you'll see this coming up here in a second. Also, I have to kick with the left foot. I can't put my weight on my left leg. But bing, he telegraphed it a little bit, but I got it. The people pop on it. There's some applause in the goddamn ringside area. I'm going for his pants. See, just bland underwear. Boom. And runs past old Doug Dillinger. He didn't even milk it. I don't think he was happy about it. The people liked it. Nice little fucking pop there. Got the baby face in victory, still selling the effects. Give the people a little souvenir if they want it. Yeah, there they go. And I think he left his racket, he left my racket, and he left his phone. There's Jason Hervey handing me the phone up. Spit on the phone. Boom. Spike the other fucking racket. Boom. I'm still running this fucking place, ladies and gentlemen.
That's awesome.
And that's and here's the slow-mo replay, but that's all it needed to be. And you couldn't say that we didn't that we had a funny or a cooperative fight. We had a non-wrestler fucking fight with each other. Like I said, he telegraphed that a mile away, but boom. We couldn't go for laughs. We worked awful hard. I cut my fucking head off in that cold ass TBS studio and took a lot of bumps, and we both worked too fucking hard verbally and physically for people to think that we were just jacking around. So there you have it.
Well,
closing thoughts.
Well, let me play something for you in terms of closing thoughts. This is from October of 1990, John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight. Paul E. was on the show, and a caller called up to ask him about fighting you again. Let's hear this.
Let's take Mike from Cedarhurst. Mike. Who's this? Mike from Cedarhurst?
No, this is Brian from Wisconsin.
How you doing?
From Wisconsin?
Wisconsin. How you doing, Brian?
Good. Paulie.
Yeah.
Why don't you challenge Jim Cornette for tennis rackets versus portable phone match?
Tennis rackets? Because I already beat him. Because I've already beat up Jim Cornette. It was 2 years ago on TBS, and I laid out Jim Cornette. He got 14 stitches in his head. Yeah, but didn't he chase you out of the ring last year in your underwear? So I was the only guy in the ring that was man enough to do that, to be on a pay-per-view in his underwear. I mean, come on, think about this. Would you want to see Jim Cornette in his underwear?
No.
It'd be like monkey making love to a football. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it is a little great. I mean, I was man enough to walk around in my underwear because I'm a well-built athlete and I could run around in my underwear. Jim Cornette, I didn't want to embarrass the American public by having some Japanese businessmen watching a pay-per-view going, "Oh, look how American manager rock." See, that's a problem with our society today. You got a bunch of businessmen walking around stuffing their fat faces with pizza, walking around going, blah, 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 and they're buying the Empire State Building in Rockefeller Center. Come on, wake up. Can you believe it? Listen, thanks for your call, Brian.
And by the way, Paul again should never have said I sounded like Mickey Mouse on amphetamines back then. But anyway, all righty then.
That is your line, right? Is that where he would have heard that line?
Well, no, actually, he got it the same place I got it, from Dennis Condrey.
Ah.
But I got it from Dennis first.
With that, the drive-thru has closed. All right, old school. Of course, you can hear the drive-thru when it debuts next week, next Monday, wherever you find your favorite podcast. This week and next week, the Jim Cornette Experience will be Omnibus Collections. Stay tuned wherever you find your favorite podcast for a very long and fun look at a various topic that we will tackle and discuss. The Omnibus rides again on the Jim Cornette Experience. You can follow Jim on Twitter at @TheJimCornette. You can follow me on Twitter at GreatBrianLast. You can hear me on the 605 Superpodcast at 605pod.com, available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Don't forget, get access to the archives, patreon.com/Cornette, $5 a month. You get access to the archives from the beginning in 2013.
Everything. You get it all.
Everything. Right now, we are in the beginning of 2016. New episodes added each and every Sunday night. And the Alice era has come to an end. So if you've been waiting to hear episodes without Alice, the time is now. Patreon.com/Cornette. Don't forget the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Over 175,000 subscribers strong. Be one of them today. tinyurl.com/officialcornyyoutube, or just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette. It is the first thing that will pop up. Full episodes, clips of episodes, and of course the Omnibus Collections, the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Cornette's Collectibles at jimcornette.com. Come back in February, right?
Sometime in February.
jimcornette.com. But until next week on the drive-thru, and of course the Omnibus Collection later this week for the Experience, we want to wish everyone Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Anything else you want to say, Jim?
Ho, ho, ho.
Tally ho!